Size Mansion. My name is Rebecca. I'll be your tour guide today, as Lincoln mentioned. We're going to start out with the very first sanctuary that ever existed. This was the heavenly sanctuary. Psalms 102, verse 19, talks about this sanctuary, how God looked down from the height of the sanctuary onto earth. Exodus 15:17 talks about how his own hands formed that heavenly sanctuary. Now, in the beginning, everything was good, right? But then Eve ate the fruit, sin came in, and Isaiah 59 verse 2 talks about how sin came as a wall between us and God. So he couldn't come and talk with us face to face anymore like he wanted to, because he would have killed us. Because he's pure, sin cannot survive in the presence of God. So to preserve us, to keep us alive, he couldn't come talk with Adam and Eve face to face. So years later, when Moses and the Israelites, they were in the wilderness, he asked Moses to build the Mosaic tabernacle. Exodus 25:8 says, "Let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them." But it was so much more than God just wanting to be with his people. The Israelites and us as well, we can't go and see the heavenly sanctuary, see the work that he's doing there to save us. But we can look towards the earthly sanctuary and see what everything in there represents. How through the earthly sanctuary, he's showing us that there is hope from sin, that eventually he'll bring us home to live with him forever. He's showing us how we can live our lives on earth. You could look at the sanctuary as the pathway to heaven. In the sanctuary, we see the way to God. We see the way to eternal life. And you guys will see that as we go throughout the tour. Also, don't view the sanctuary as a bunch of facts and details. It's a love story, as you may be coming to realize. It's the story of how God is coming to save his people that disobeyed. So the Mosaic Tabernacle, it lasted 487 years until Solomon's Temple was built. Solomon's Temple was built to give God a better house, something that he deserved. And it only lasted 372 years. That's because of sin. The Israelites, they disobeyed God, and they didn't want him around. Since he wasn't going to force himself on them, he left, and without his protection there, the Babylonians, they came in, destroyed Solomon's temple, and took the Israelites captive. One of those captives was Ezekiel. This is the temple of Ezekiel's vision that God gave to Ezekiel. He wanted the Israelites to build this temple. But there's no record of it ever being built, and we think that's because of a lack of faith. They thought that this job would be too hard for them. So instead they built Zerubbabel's temple. On the day of dedication, for these two temples, fire came down from heaven to the altar sacrifice, and God's glory moved into the most holy place. But for Zerubbabel's temple, on the day of dedication, no such thing happened. God's glory did not come down from heaven, or fire did not come down from heaven, and God's glory did not move into the most holy place, because he did not ask them to build this temple. They disobeyed and built this one instead of Ezekiel's. So it does say in Haggai 2:9 that a greater glory did fill this temple. And that greater glory was Jesus. This is where Jesus walked as he was on earth. And as he was here during his ministry, the Jewish authorities, they came to him. They said, "By whose authority do you do these things?" He said, "Well, if you tear down this temple, in 3 days I'll raise it up." And of course you couldn't take a temple like this, tear it down and build it again in 3 days. But he was talking about that he would be crucified, and 3 days later he was going to be resurrected. John 2:21 says that he spoke of the temple of his body. And we're created in his image, right? Genesis 1:27. And since we're created in his image and he's calling himself a temple, that means that we're all temples, right? And 1 Corinthians 3:16 and 17 is one I like to read to you all so that you get exactly what it says. If I can find it here. It says, "Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are." So just as the Israelites, they were given instructions as to how the Mosaic Tabernacle was to be built, how the services were to be done, God's given us the 10 Commandments so that we can know how to keep our bodies holy, holy temples that he can dwell in, and then eventually we can join him forever and live eternally with him in heaven. And our time is just about up, so we're going to head on down to the courtyard. Psalm 77:13 says, "Thy way, O God, is in the sanctuary." And we're going to get to see his way today throughout that sanctuary. There is some masks by the door if you want to have them. It gets a bit windy out there with all the dust blowing